wishes. What do you want?
I don't know. To be happy?
To be happy.
I want the American dream. I want to be happy.
যেতে পারি শান্ত করো টাটা টাটা টাটা
অনেকে গালাগালিও করে দেয় মাঝে সাঝে যারা ধরুন একটু ডিম করে থাকে হয়তো রিস্কায় উঠলো তারা গালাগালি তাকে আর মারতে যাবো আমি মারি ঝগড়া করি না কেন আজকে ঝগড়া করবো আবার পরের দিন আমার রিস্কায় উঠবে না বলে ঝগড়া করে ঠিক আছে দুটো গালাগালি করলো
Would it surprise you to know that in a recent survey, this rickshaw driver, Manoj Singh, was found to be as happy as the average American?
তখন খালি পায়ে দাঁড়ায় তখন ওই গরমকালে একটু বেশি কষ্ট হয় আমাদের পা পড়ে প্লাস এদিকে রোদ্দুর তাপ আর এমনি বর্ষাকাল ভালো আমাদের কোনো অসুবিধা নেই ভিজে গেলেও কোনো চিন্তা থাকে না জানি আবার শুকিয়ে যায় আর একটা প্যাসেঞ্জার উঠলে দৌড়লে শুকিয়ে যাবে বাড়ি আমার ভালো বাড়িতে ভালো লাগে একদিক দিয়ে এদিকে ফাঁকা হাওয়াও আসে বর্ষাকালে একটু কষ্ট হয় ঝাপটা ঝুপটি চারিদিক দিয়ে মারে তখন অসুবিধা নাহলে এমনি প্লাস্টিক উপরে আছে চার সাইডে প্লাস্টিক দেওয়া প্লাস একদিকে জানলা আছে ওই জানলাতে হাওয়া ভালোই আসে ভালোই থাকি খারাপ কিছু না এই সকালবেলায় ফিরি যখন ওরা বসে থাকে ওই চা দোকান সামনেই ওরা যখন মানে তাকায় রাস্তার দিকে যে বাবা এই আসবে তখন ওদেরও মন ভালো লাগে প্লাস আমাকে যখন বাবা বলে ডাকে আমার মনটা আরো খুব খুশি হয় আর কি ওই বাচ্চা কাচ্চা যখন ওই গরিব বলতে গেলে কি বাচ্চা কাচ্চার মুখ দেখে তখন আমার বুকটা এত উঁচু হয়ে যায় যে আমার মতন কেউ বড় লোক নেই হয়তো নুন ভাতি খাচ্ছি কিন্তু খুব আনন্দ হয় যে না কারোর সাথে ঝাঁটি নেই কারোর সাথে এই যে মিলে রয়েছে আমাদের খুব আনন্দ হয় আমরা সবাই বন্ধু
For hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, people have studied depression and psychological illness. The goal of psychologists was primarily to rid a patient of their problems. Recently, however, modern science has begun to look at how happiness works. What are the building blocks of a life that's not just free of illness, but one that flourishes with a deep and genuine happiness?
When I got into happiness research, it was 1981. It was not a popular field in psychology. People thought it was flaky, that it was loose. A professor said to me, you can never measure happiness. Now, why they thought you could measure depression, which they were all doing, but you couldn't measure happiness, I'm not sure. And then in the 90s, people started getting interested in it, and now it's absolutely amazing how many people are interested.
Magazine articles and books are being written about it. There's even a new field of science called positive psychology, which studies happiness. It became the most popular class at Harvard, with 1,000 kids showing up every week for a happiness class.
The first thing is to realize that happiness can actually help you get your other goals, have better relationships, make more money, do better at the job. People on the job are going to like you better if you're happy. What we've done, and I've done this for the last 25 years, collecting data. So we follow people and look at their moods over time. We've also looked at random samples of people from around the world, who's happy, who's not happy. Then we crunch all these numbers and we say, gee, what really matters?
By studying identical twins, people with almost exactly the same genetic makeup, researchers have discovered that approximately 50% of the differences in our happiness levels is determined by our genes. They call that our genetic set point, or our genetic set range.
Most of us are born with a certain range of happiness that we fall in most of the time. And even when really good or really bad things happen to us, we kind of tend to return to our set point.
And while 50% is genetic, amazingly, our circumstances, like what job we have or how much money we have, our social status, our health, those things that many of us are told to focus on, they only account for 10% of the differences in our happiness.
Most people are kind of stunned at how small that is, but that still leaves 40% unaccounted for. And so our theory suggests that there is a great deal you can do to become happier, and that 40% is left for kind of intentional behavior, things that we can do on a regular basis to become happier. It's very important, if a person wants to become happier, to try not to adapt to what they're doing. So they would consciously vary what they do. It could be like when you do your daily run, that you take a different route. I mean, that's not really, mind-boggling. For some people, it's going to be a lot of change. For some people, it's going to be a little, but that change is important. It's sort of the variety of the spice of life.
Any discussion of happiness centers a lot on dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain called a neurotransmitter that's necessary for feelings of pleasure and happiness.
So electrical impulses come down a nerve, they hit the connection, and the connection releases chemicals. The chemicals diffuse to the next nerve cell, they bind to receptors in the next nerve cell, and they cause an electrical change. That chemical release that is released is called a neurotransmitter.
Pretty much as you age, from about teenage years onward, you're slowly losing dopamine synapses and probably dopamine neurons as well. As far as we know, no one's observed those regenerating. If it's too severe, then you end up with Parkinson's disease. The body adapts to what it needs to do. So the use it or lose it probably applies to some degree in the brain as well. And so the idea would be to seek out experiences that release dopamine, or you need dopamine to do. The things that are best at doing that, interestingly, involve physical activity. So aerobic exercise is probably one of the best releasers of dopamine, especially if you do it in novel ways.
What makes you happy?
I like banana splits, I like banana peels, I like big bananas.
The brain is basically, on this level, it's very similar to a muscle. The parts of the brain that are, look.
Sorry. I thought you were going to say the brain is a sponge, but I'll go with muscle.
I started studying people who were doing something very difficult and demanding for no good reason, no money, no status, nothing, but just because they like to do it. My understanding of what motivated these activities was not anything that came from outside, but it came from the activity itself. And I gave the name flow to this kind of synergy of different aspects of consciousness where you wish you could go forever because it feels that you are completely fulfilling something that you can do well, and you can see it happening, and you feel that nothing else matters. You have very clear goals that you know moment by moment what you have to do. Like if you're singing or playing a musical instrument, you always know what notes or chords you want to play next, and you can hear whether you did it right or not. People in that situation feel in control, they forget their problems. Interestingly, they forget themselves, so that the kind of ego that we are always aware of in everyday life disappears. It builds over time a feeling that life is worth living.
Flow can happen almost anywhere. It can happen during personal time, or it can happen with your family. It can even happen at your job.
It's all in the rhythm. It's all in just keeping the rhythm going. Doing it 14 years. I love it. Don't want to go nowhere else.
Why do you love it?
It's like cooking. Always is.
I gotta order hash browns all the way. Patty milk.
That's the grill operator.
The research is clear. People who experience flow on a regular basis are happier than those who don't.
Much of what we believe about the causes and sources of happiness simply isn't true. People overestimate how much impact both good and bad events will have on them in the future. People believe that if good things happen, they're going to be ecstatic and that joy will last a very long time. In fact, they are ecstatic and the joy quickly dissipates. People believe that if bad things happen, losing a lover, losing a football game, losing a job, they will be devastated and devastated for a very long time. In fact, they are devastated for a very short time. In general, people do really good when things go really bad. Sounds like a country song, but it actually turns out to be true.
This is Town and Country in 1969, and I was featured as one of the top 50 debutantes in the country at the International Ball, along with Tricia Nixon and people like that.
She was one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life, and I still have pictures of her, you know, when she was 20. All my memories of my mother are just fond, and I mean, she was a genuinely good mother all my life.
I was very, very busy raising 3 children and loving that, and raising horses on my ranch and doing volunteer work. I had a very full life, busy, busy, busy. My kids were in soccer and baseball and things like that. When I was run over by a truck in 1992, I was in shock. My whole life changed instantaneously. It was the 4th of July on my family ranch in Texas, where I'm from. We were coming in our truck from the barn right here, and as we were approaching, I saw my sister-in-law driving down the road in her truck, and I thought, well, if she stops, I'll get out and we'll talk. And so she did. And so I got out, and I guess it was right here, actually, where the truck was. And we were having a disagreement. Wow. She drove off in a hurry, and when she did, my hand was on the door handle. I was running alongside, trying to get my hand out and screaming, and fell. And when I fell, I was dragged until my hand disengaged and I fell under the truck, and I was crawling and clawing the gravel to try and get away, and I couldn't. And it went over up my spine and over my head and crushed my face in the rocks.
My dad had already jumped out of the truck and was screaming, and I got there, and of course we both thought you were dead.
When I was in ICU, they could only recognize me by my hands.
Just, oh, my poor, beautiful mother.
And I had friends who didn't know what had happened to me. If I saw them on the street and went up to them, they just fell apart and started crying and were horrified. My husband divorced me and left me. He became a really bad alcoholic. It was very traumatic for him too, but for 9.5 years, I was totally disabled. I've had 30 surgeries on my face. I don't know if it was a dream or if it was a vision or whatever, because I was kind of groggy after the surgery. And I had these images of, and not an image that I had remembered ever seeing on my dad's face, but just this lecherous look. The memories that were coming back were of abuse by him, not just fondling, but fondling me, but also raping and threatening to kill me with his hands around my neck when I fought. I guess the shock of the trauma cracked this very good denial system I had built up in my life. I just really was angry I was alive. I thought about killing myself. I I would buy myself time, say, well, okay, that's always an option, but I'll wait 6 months because I've got to be here for my kids today. I'd always been a super doer, an overachiever, and need-to-know person. And to be able to say, I don't understand, and I don't need to understand, and that's okay. It was kind of a catalyst of a healing process in my entire family. But it was very scary. In my life, integrating, accepting all of my life is part of healing. And I have horses. I found them very healing to me. I had seen him at one of my stepdaughter's wedding. We knew each other years ago, and he asked me things like, did my nose work? And I liked and appreciated that, you know. And what was it like having been beautiful and then not? He wasn't afraid to talk to me, to talk about things. And we got married a little over 2 years ago. His name is Happy, and we have a wonderful life together. Calls me beautiful, and I love him. Yeah, it is a strange truth, but the truth is I am a happier person. I am more grounded, more centered, more connected and integrated with who I am and grateful for who I am today. I'm working with other people now as a practitioner. I think that you can make a choice and that you do make a choice when things happen in life.
Oh, this is fun. I haven't just stood out in the rain in quite a while.
There's a general lay sense that all adversity is bad, and the scientific research doesn't really support that. One of the key ingredients to happiness is being able to recover from adversity more quickly. So it's not that people who are happy don't respond to adversity. They do. They show an appropriate response to adversity, but they come back down to baseline quickly.
There's no such thing as pleasure without pain, of whatever sort, emotional or otherwise, physical or otherwise. Your nervous system is a differential engine. It looks at differences, it looks at contrast, that's all it cares about. It integrates information by integrating a bunch of little differences and things.
What do you want out of life?
To be successful, to be happy, and to live a long, healthy life.
What's going to make you successful and happy? What will make you feel like you're successful and happy?
Right now, money. Yeah, lots of money.
We're told in our society that the way to be a competent person, the way to be a good person, is to make a lot of money. In the last 50 years, economic growth has gone up a lot. In America, for example, we're about twice as wealthy as we were 50 years ago. But nationally representative surveys of people's happiness show that happiness has remained stagnant. People aren't any happier than they were 50 years ago, even though they're living in a lot bigger houses, they have more cars.
Anybody who says money doesn't buy happiness should go talk to somebody living under a bridge. But anybody who says money buys happiness should go talk to Bill Gates, okay? Neither of those things is actually true. When money buys you out of the burdens of homelessness, of not knowing where your next meal will come from, it changes your happiness dramatically. But once you have basic needs met, more money doesn't seem to buy more happiness. The difference in happiness between a person who earns $5,000 and $50,000 is dramatic. The difference in happiness between a person who earns $50,000 and $50 million is not dramatic.
The idea goes back to this notion of the hedonic treadmill, which says that whatever level of wealth or material goods you have, you adapt to it and you'll always want more. That's what the hedonic treadmill is.
The hedonic adaptation is one of the main enemies of happiness.
Compassion. Richard Davidson told us that people who do a specific form of meditation on compassion and loving kindness can increase their happiness levels to a greater extent and for longer periods of time, even than people taking powerful antidepressant medications.
There are specific meditation practices that have been around for more than 2,500 years, which are explicitly designed to cultivate qualities like compassion and loving kindness. The person we've tested the most in our lab is a person by the name of Mathieu Ricard. He has been a Tibetan Buddhist monk for more than 30 years. He also holds a PhD in molecular biology. And we have looked intensively at Mathieu's brain, both at rest as well as when he is intentionally generating these states of compassion. So there's no obvious change in external behavior. You know, he's just sitting there, and then we give him the instruction to begin the compassion meditation, and all of a sudden, it's like, you know, parts of the brain are on fire. These are areas of the brain which are extremely important for understanding happiness and well-being. And so we are, for example, currently doing studies where we are having people who've never meditated before, and we're having them do very simple exercises, 2 weeks of training in this simple compassion practice does change the brain in ways which are similar to, although not nearly as well defined, as what we see in very long-term meditation practitioners. There is some evidence to indicate that we actually change the gross structure of the brain, literally the size of particular cortical areas in the brain change in their thickness. We, through intention, can change our brain.
We ask people to count their blessings on a regular basis. Say every Sunday night you sit down, you write down 5 things for which you're grateful, and kind of try to contemplate that. And we found that the students who counted their blessings once a week, every Sunday night, became happier. A couple studies we did, we asked people to commit acts of kindness on a regular basis. You know, they're going out and they're putting change in parking meters, and they're, you know, helping their friend with homework, or was visiting someone in the nursing home, or, you know, really doing real, you know, concrete behaviors. And it seems to me from our experience that the acts of kindness so far have been the most effective.
Mother Teresa, a symbol of compassion, opened her first home for dying and destitute people here in Calcutta, India. Andy Wimmer is a volunteer at the home.
I was a bank and computer manager for many years, and a quite ambitious fellow. I wanted to become the youngest bank director there, spoiled with a good income, used and spent a lot of money, and had a good life, actually, enjoyed the life. Yeah? I used to waste a lot of money on fashion, for example. I was quite a fellow with quite, you know, into fashion and all these things. But it is not important anymore. I always felt that there is more in this life, you know, than just going to the bank and having a good salary and having a good career and maybe a wife and children, and that's it. It can't be. Life is such a precious and beautiful thing. There should be some more, you know. I met someone who worked in the home for the dying, and he said, I show you that place, and if you like feeling helping us, then you're welcome. Yeah? Bon appetit. I remember when I came first into the home for the dying, the first thing I saw was a young dying boy, maybe 15 years old, in very bad condition. And I had to feed him. And I don't know, I fed him and he ate with great difficulties, but then he opened his eyes and looked at me, and I thought, so that's it now, you know? So it was like a flash, it was like a small enlightenment. You learn a lot from these patients we care for. For example, acceptance and tolerance also. So we pick the people up usually from garbage dumps and from railway station platforms and admit them in the home, and then with basic medical care we try to save their lives. But the most important is to show them that they are loved by God, that they are not forgotten, that their life is precious, that someone cares. So we do everything by hand, but there is a tremendous sweetness in taking someone's burden up a little bit. Just to lift this little bent body and take the burden away a little bit and help him to carry it. My life has a meaning. You have someone, a dying man in front of you, a dying young man, and he asks for a glass of water. It's just very little, but it's so important to give him this glass of water. It's such a symbolic act even, you know? I got this life. I get my parents, my friends. I was never really sick. I had always enough food to eat. I am the first one in my generations which never experienced a war. For me, my life is like a loan given from God, and I will give this loan back, but with interest. And that's what we do. You serve your brother in front of you who is in need, and it gives yourself a fulfilled, happy life. Perfect, no?
Gratitude, compassion, caring, love. These are, to me, what I would call spiritual emotions. And they make you think of things bigger than yourself. If you only seek your own happiness, it can be kind of a selfish thing. But once you move to the spiritual emotions and worry about the well-being of the world, your life grows. You care about something bigger than yourself. You, in a way, can transcend your own life, your own death, by caring about these things that are bigger than yourself.
If each of us even spent a smidgen of time each day actually practicing to cultivate happiness and also to cultivate other virtuous qualities like compassion and altruism, the world would really be a better place, and we'd all be transforming our brains in very positive ways.
And it's not about, oh, I must change my life totally and cut off from my past and I'll be a better person. It's not about that. It's because the trick is to be authentically you.
We should really be thinking of happiness as a skill, which is no different than learning to play the violin or learning to play golf.
The formula for happiness is not the same for everyone. But the good news is that the things we love to do are the building blocks of a happy life. Play, having new experiences, friends and family, doing things that are meaningful, appreciating what we have. These are the things that make us happy, and they're free. And with happiness, the more you have, the more everyone has.